Happy Wednesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Overall, we have a few changes with your 7-day forecast here back home, but we also have some new developments down in the tropics that we're going to cover. So stay tuned to the very end. We'll cover the tropics after we get to your immediate forecast here to what's going to pertain to any plans that you have for the remainder of the work week and as we head into the weekend, which is only 2 days away and very, very exciting. So rain chances slightly improve, and that's mainly for today and tomorrow, but we'll talk about why that is, and we'll also talk about why the rain chances are a little bit greater as we head into the beginning of next week. Nice mornings and then warm days, and warm days kind of subject to opinion. We could even borderline have some hot days that are in store for the end of the work week, but still overall mostly dry for the weekend. That's what we're looking at as we head into any of those plans for backyard barbecues, any tailgate parties that you may have. But overall, the rain chances have slightly improved for what we have had as of recently. So let's take a look around the quad here in Central Georgia. Blue sky in downtown Dublin, lots of blue sky here in Warner Robins as well, and that transitions down to the Georgia National Fairgrounds. I was mentioning it a little bit this morning. You will see some puddles over here on the walkways by the Georgia National Fairgrounds. That's not anything in the way of rain in West Houston County. This is just simply the sprinkler systems that actually are continuing to go, I do believe, right now. So that's why we continue to have those puddles, and we haven't seen that water evaporate just yet. But downtown Macon is a bit of an interesting sky cam view here at this hour. Not entirely empty like we're so used to. If you look way off in the distance, this is facing towards the northwest over downtown, or northeast, excuse me, over downtown Macon. You can actually see a couple of light rain showers off in the distance. So that has been the case all morning long. We've had some rain showers in the forecast, and we're going to continue to have a few scattered showers here and there, but most areas are probably going to dodge that rain. So you can get a hint about where the rain has currently come through, and that's obviously up in Monticello, where your temperature is still at 64 degrees in light of that rain-cooled air. So that cluster of showers continuing to push down towards the south and southeast. We can get a glimpse of them in Jones County right now, I do believe is where they're still standing. Otherwise, it looks like we have a good temperature spread here at this hour. We have some areas that are hovering in the low 70s, like Macon at 72 degrees, but mainly a good mix of mid and upper 70s. So these temperatures continue to be a little bit warmer each and every day that we take a look at them. 78 at the warmest in Dublin, in Cochran, in Rochelle, Americus, and Butler. So not one lone area standing out with that highest temperature in Central Georgia here as we approach the 11 a.m. hour. Also, one other upper 60 on the map, and that would be up in Forsyth, where you do see some of those numbers that are still a little bit cooler in light of rain-cooled air, and along with that, plenty of cloud cover. So 78, how does that match up against the eastern United States? Well, you guessed it, once again, New Orleans with the warmest temperature at 84 degrees here before 11 a.m., 81 in Houston, 80 in Panama City, 80 in Jacksonville, and then an 82 down in Orlando. So really those areas along the Gulf Coast have been holding on to the humidity, holding on to some of those warmer temperatures, and you can see that reciprocated on your current temperatures map. So right now, you do see some circulation up here right off the Atlantic coast of Maryland, Virginia, and that's indicated by these counterclockwise rotation of the winds off in these areas of the country. There's plenty of rain up here in the mid-Atlantic portion of the country. That's why you see 64 and 62 in Washington, D.C. and Virginia Beach. But many of our neighboring areas hovering around the same temperatures that we do have. But as you go up to the north and the northeast, this actually isn't courtesy of a wedge setup like we have been so used to. This is actually courtesy of the cloud cover and the rain showers that are associated with that low pressure center. Keep that in mind as we go into the surface map and talk about why our setup right now is going to lead to some scattered shower chances. Dew point temperatures scattered about the 60s, low 60s, the mid 60s, some flashy areas of that dark green color. We could see those occasionally, but it's not looking to be very widespread swampy areas, and the dew point temperatures have gotten a bit of an uptick. So there's a little bit more moisture in the atmosphere. The more moisture that we have and the warmer our temperatures continue to get, you get that rising motion that's going to lead to the sprouting of a couple of light showers. This still isn't really conducive enough into producing anything in the way of thunderstorms. So humidity levels, you see that one lone patch of dark green just to the northeast of us in Macon. That's going to be up in Putnam and Hancock counties down here in southeast Georgia. There's also a patch of very humid air Plenty of dark green shades over towards the west, back into Mississippi, some stretching into western Alabama, down near the Panhandle, pretty close to Panama City and Apalachicola, down near Port St. Joe. And there is a significant amount of drier air up to the north and northeast of us. Some up here in northeast Georgia, around Clayton, Georgia, getting up into Toccoa, and then back up into upstate South Carolina, up into central North Carolina. That's where some of the drier air is currently present. So here's a look at your feels like temperatures. You may notice a bit of an influence, and obviously plenty of areas that are already feeling like the 80-degree mark. It feels like 80 in Cochrane, 80 in Dublin, 81 down in McRae, 82 in Unadilla, along with 81 and 80 in Butler and Americus here at this hour. But most areas still feeling pretty accurate of what their actual temperatures read. You won't see too much difference between the actual temperatures and the feels like temperatures until they get above that 80-degree mark, which many of our temperatures are still hovering below. In fact, all of our temperatures are still below the 80-degree mark. Winds and wind gusts, nothing really worth noting today. Maybe a bit of a westerly breeze as we go throughout today, so a bit of a shift in wind directions. Obviously, they've been coming in from the northeast over the last couple of days, which has been continuing to push those lower surface dew points down into central Georgia, but not necessarily the case anymore. So we'll still hang out in the 70s, until we get to around lunchtime, and then we should get up to the 80-degree mark, and we'll continue the upward trend. 85 by 2 p.m., topping out at 86 throughout that warmest portion of the afternoon. Now, this graphic definitely undershot the high temperature yesterday, and I do believe it's going to do the same as we head into this afternoon. So let's talk about the numbers. 88 for a high temperature yesterday. I forecasted a high of 86. So yes, we definitely were above what we were thinking. And also along with that, right on par for average this time of year at 88 degrees. Your morning low temperature was about 7 degrees below average of 65 degrees at 58 degrees. So we saw the temperatures from the morning hours increase about 30 degrees into the afternoon time frame. And then your morning low record 48 back in 1967. You go 13 years into the future, you're talking about a very warm spell. So a very cold spell back in 1967, 1980, had a very warm spell with a high temperature of 102, which set the record for yesterday all time. No rain worth talking about at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. Your departure of rain now creeping really close to 5 inches above average, but still not really anything worth noting. We can continue for another 2 or 3, maybe even 4 weeks at a time with not receiving any rainfall whatsoever. That your departure is still probably going to have a plus mark in front of it. Sunrise yesterday, 7:19, and sunset was at 7:39. So if you weren't tuning in yesterday, we were referring to some of the sunrise and sunset times as we go into September 22nd. That's next Monday and the first official day of the fall season. 7:22 will be that sunrise, 7:30 will be the sunset time, hours of daylight at about just over 12 hours. And then we continue to see that window get shorter and shorter. Halfway through the month of October, 7:38 for a sunrise, 7:01 p.m. for a sunset. So about into the last 1/3 of the month of October, we'll start to see that sunset be before 7 p.m. So obviously the day is definitely already getting shorter and getting a good indication of that. Nowhere near that territory we were in the summertime months where we had some sunsets that were close to the 9 p.m. hour, but just under 11.5 hours of daylight for October 15th. And then the clock switch happens on November 2nd. So November 2nd, you are going to see that sunrise get an hour earlier, and you're going to see the sunset get an hour earlier. So we are going to fall back in nature. And then your sunrise is actually going to happen before 7 a.m. once again, but your sunset is going to get way, way earlier. How about before 6 p.m.? 5:42, indicating that we're going to have less than 11 hours of daylight, 10 hours and 48 minutes of daylight to be exact. And we'll actually continue to see that window get shorter and shorter as we go into the first day of winter, which I do believe is on December 21st, but just kind of giving you an indication of some specific dates and about how many hours of daylight we're expecting in the near future. So that sunrise this morning was at 7:20. 88 degrees for a high temperature, so just like yesterday, but we are reintroducing some better rain chances in the forecast this afternoon. Now, I think your rain's still mainly going to come in the form of some isolated showers, but I wouldn't rule out hearing a rumble of thunder or two. not necessarily a bad thing. It's nothing to worry about in the way of severe weather either. But if you do hear some rumbles of thunder, that means some heavier rainfall is going to be associated with maybe that isolated shower or isolated thunderstorm at that point. So that would be a good thing. The heavier rain that you get, it would help alleviate the dry conditions just a little bit more. And the good news is this isn't looking to sit over the same area for an extended period of time like we were talking about a couple weeks ago that led to some flash flooding risk. Winds mainly out of the west at about 5 to 10 miles per hour. We could see the occasional gusts up to about 15 plus miles per hour, but overall today, not too many changes from yesterday, and I think most of you are still going to dodge the rain this afternoon. Here's where your heat indices are expected to top out at. Like I mentioned, we have a little bit more moisture in the atmosphere, so we could see about a degree or two influence in what the feels like temperatures are. Feeling very close to that 90-degree mark, and I wouldn't doubt that later this afternoon we actually do see a couple 90s, maybe even a 91 or a 92 pop up on the feels like temperature graphic. And then as we head into the evening hours, starting to feel substantially better just past dinner time, feeling like 81 degrees, and then down into the 70s as we head into the nighttime hours, 9, 10, and 11 p.m. Here's your satellite and radar picture, not entirely empty, and it has been a talking point so far throughout the morning hours. We had a good cluster of some steady showers that moved in through Putnam, Hancock counties, portions of Baldwin County, and as it moved down into Washington County, that's when we really saw a lot of that rain fizzle out in nature, and it was very quick to just become a few isolated sprinkles. But there are plenty of scattered showers over to the east of us near Waynesboro, Georgia, up near the Augusta area. But back here in central Georgia, what we see are just some scattered sprinkles right there on the county line of Jones County and Baldwin counties, trying to push down into Wilkinson County. Not quite sure if any of this is associated with rain right there, but we did see some cooler temperatures up in Forsyth. I would imagine that the cloud cover is pretty dense in nature and is doing a pretty good job of at least blocking some of that sunshine to allow for some cooler temperatures to stand for just a tad bit longer. Here's your satellite and radar picture for the entire state of Georgia. Doesn't look like we have much in the way of rain up in the northern portion of the state, back over into Alabama, but the radar just may be a little bit too far away to pick up on some of that precipitation. Remember, the farther and farther away you go from the radar, which is centered over in Jeffersonville, Georgia, the beam is not necessarily flat out, because if it was to do that, then obviously you have things like curvature of the earth, obviously not flat ground whatsoever. So you're going to continue to hit things with the satellite or with the radar beam if it were to just go straight out horizontally. So there's a little bit of a tilt. It's about a half a degree tilt, and that continues to get higher and higher the farther away you go. So eventually you're overshooting some cloud tops and you're overshooting some of the rain, and obviously we're not able to pick up on rain, say maybe a couple 100 miles away back over into Alabama, maybe up into South Carolina, portions of Tennessee, down into Florida. So we really only get a good picture view of what's going on mainly in the central Georgia area, but in some of our neighboring counties as well. So I did mention a low pressure center up to the north and the northeast. Right now it's still centered right over in eastern Virginia, maybe getting into the southern tip of Maryland. This low pressure center obviously doesn't really look like a big force system. Now there are some fronts associated with it, and it does have the characteristics of something tropical, but it's definitely not anything in the way of something tropical. It's just really kind of a cluster of low pressure that's created widespread showers, widespread cloud cover up in the eastern half of the United States. But it is having an influence on our forecast in the fact that you see this rotation, this counterclockwise rotation. So obviously plenty of moisture the closer to this low pressure center that you get. Well, all that moisture, some of it is being sent down into the south and the southeast courtesy of that counterclockwise rotation. So despite even having all of this high pressure down here in our neighboring states, up in North Carolina, off the coast of South Carolina, down near the panhandle of Florida, more so towards the toe of the boot in Louisiana, we are continuing to see moisture infiltrating that high pressure courtesy of the low pressure center, and it should kind of meander in this region of the country for the next 24 to 48 hours, really 24 to about 46 hours or 36 hours, excuse me, and then it's going to continue to move up to the north and the northeast. the farther that gets away from us, the lesser and lesser our rain chances are going to get. So here's the latest run of Future View. Let's see what's in store this afternoon. Still scattered showers in the picture as we go into about 3 p.m., continuing all the way throughout the afternoon and evening hours, trying to hold on to some rain into the nighttime hours. But just like last night, we could hold on to a few scattered showers into the overnight hours that many of you are walking out the door to and maybe waking up to as you are making your morning commute tomorrow. But this isn't looking widespread whatsoever. It's just going to really be a stray shower here and there, and it's not going to be anything substantial in the way of rainfall. And then we go into Thursday afternoon, and take a look at this. Once again, scattered green dots, maybe some flashes of yellow, some flashes of orange potentially. Like I said, there could be a low-end thunderstorm at the very most if we're talking about anything in the way of substantial rain. But overall, I think it's mainly just going to be a story of scattered showers, and they're going to continue to pop up here and there. Don't get dead set on the locations. This doesn't mean that northern Putnam County is going to receive rainfall at 6 p.m. on the dot tomorrow afternoon. I do believe that it's just really we all have the potential for maybe a very short-lived and a relatively light shower in nature. And as we transition into the nighttime hours, we see most of the rain try to fizzle out, but we're still trying to hold on to a few sprinkles into the early morning hours each and every day. Worth noting for your morning commute, you could run into a stray shower or two. Now with this latest run of Future View, we have actually seen some changes for Friday. Friday didn't look like we had much in the way of impressive rain chances, but Friday actually looks like a very similar story to today and Thursday, but obviously we don't take one model run and run with it. But the good news is we are still seeing the idea that, hey, whatever pops up in the way of rain, that's going to mainly be in the afternoon time frame. As we transition into the evening and nighttime hours for football Friday night, for all your tailgates or whatever plans that you may have, most of the rain does look to get out of the picture as we transition into Saturday. In terms of how much rain should you expect? Well, number one, it's just going to be localized areas that you actually get some totals that are maybe a little bit greater than a couple tenths or maybe even 1/100th of an inch. Right now it's picking up on an inch of rain in Macon, which would be an absolutely amazing thing. It would be even better if we could slide that down to the south towards Middle Georgia Regional Airport. But overall, it does look like your rain chances are very scattered in nature, where you start to see some of those shades of maybe this blue and gray color. That's going to indicate some higher totals than just the general light green color. So maybe about 1/10 or 2 of an inch of rain. Some localized areas could luck out and maybe receive an inch, but I would definitely not count on that whatsoever. So over the next 3 days, 20% chance of a shower today and tomorrow. 88 turns into 89 for a high temperature tomorrow. And then as we go into Friday, 91 degrees. So while today we're kind of on the cusp of feeling like that 90-degree mark, I definitely think we will tomorrow. And then as we go into Friday, we'll actually see the numbers reflect that, and with a high temperature of 91 degrees. But right now the 10% chance of rain does stand. We need to see a little bit more model agreement, but 20% chance of rain. That still means you have an 80 or a 90% chance of dodging the rain. Not a very good likelihood of catching a shower, but having the umbrella and the rain jacket ready to go is never a bad choice whatsoever. This rain is going to be so short-lived in nature, I really don't think it's going to interrupt any afternoon plans that you may have. So afternoon high temperatures, they go up to 91. That's as high as they get. We go down to 90 on Saturday and 87 as we round out the weekend on Sunday. In terms of your morning low temperatures, still going to have that pleasant feel each and every morning. Just going to see less and less areas maybe dip down into the upper 50s. We still saw 2 areas that did that this morning. That was Dublin and Eastman, down to about 57, I think, at the lowest. So we continue to see those morning low numbers creep up just a little bit each and every day, but it's still going to be very pleasant and below average and still feel very fall-like each of the next 5 mornings. In terms of the humidity, going to fluctuate a little bit, but we haven't seen much change with this as well. We continue to see the point of the actual day that we're at go higher as we actually go into that day. I do believe probably we'll see most of your dew point temperatures in the 60s, but we'll have some drier areas where dew point temperatures are present in the 50s, and we're still staying out of the dark green box, which is the super muggy air that you can wear. Now let's take it to the long range models, and this just honestly continues to be a mess, because as we go into the beginning of next week, we're really not seeing really a good indication or good agreement that we're going to see widespread rain. But it does look like some shades are there that do have some more widespread showers, and I think it's one of the more definitive rain chances we've at least seen on these long-range models. This is what the images look like basically in the state of Georgia if we have anything in the way of rain in the near vicinity. We go all the way to Sunday, maybe a couple specks popping up here and there, but then it looks like finally some of that Atlantic moisture does surge up into the south and the southeast, at least according to the GFS model in green. Now the European model in blue is saying that rain chances are over to the west of us. We'll continue to fine tune that as we get closer, but it does look like at least some cloud cover is pretty widespread across the southeast, and that may at least help limit the high temperature for just a little bit at the beginning of next week. And then we continue to see just spilled paint everywhere according to the GFS and the Euro as we go into Tuesday next week and as we go into next Wednesday. So now taking a look at the tropics, this is something that I did tell you that we have some new developments with. And just taking a look at this, we still have the 5 a.m. advisory. We'll get another update at the 11 a.m. hour. Tropical Depression 7 did form as of 5 a.m. this morning, maintaining winds of 35 miles per hour right now, pressure of 1,007 millibars, and right now it's moving to the west at 13 miles per hour. I think it's going to get more of a northwesterly component as of the latest update because that's where you see the general cone forecast going up to the north and the northwest. So it is expected to gain tropical storm status, and that's going to mean it's going to get the next name on our hurricane season list, which would be Gabrielle. And it only needs an uptick of about 4 miles per hour in order to gain that tropical storm status. Tropical storms have winds in the range of 39 to 74 or 73 miles per hour. Then once you get above that, you get into hurricane status. Well, this system is in fact forecasted to strengthen into a hurricane. It's going to be quite a while before it does that. It's still encountering some patches of dry air, a lot of wind shear in this portion of the Atlantic Ocean. So it may take a couple days before it gets its act together in a more conducive environment for development. That's expected to happen sometime towards the end of the weekend and towards the beginning of next week. But 7 is still expected to go up to the north and the northwest. It's going to kind of go north of the Caribbean, the Windward Islands, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. But then past that, where is the system going to go? And for that, we take on our spaghetti plot models. And you can see they're all over the place, but the general consensus is this system is going to continue up into this western portion of the Atlantic Ocean. And I do believe there is a good consensus that this turns back up to the north and maybe goes back out into the Atlantic Ocean. Earlier this morning, we were seeing a couple of these spaghetti plot solutions like this one you see down here. It says AP07. This is just one individual model run about what the potential path of the center of the storm is going to do. But there were plenty of these spaghetti plots that were going directly over to the west across the Bahamas into portions of Cuba, maybe the Florida Keys and southern Florida. Doesn't look like that's as likely anymore, but we are going to continue to keep a very close eye on this because this is getting a little bit too close to comfort, some of these spaghetti plots. I still don't think we'll see any impacts here in central Georgia. In fact, we're not really forecasting any impacts in the United States whatsoever. But we do have another wave behind Tropical Depression 7, and that is this wave highlighted by the yellow shade and this yellow X. So right now it's this cluster of showers and thunderstorms that's bringing some pretty heavy rain to portions of the Cape Verde Islands. So right now it doesn't have a lot of its act together. There's a lot of Saharan dust in this region. You're not necessarily seeing it on the satellite imagery, but there's patches of that drier dust that are present in the atmosphere. So it's really inhibiting the formation as it moves off the coast of Africa. 10% chance of developing over the next 48 hours, 20% chance of developing over the next 7 days. It's going to have to continue to move over towards the west, and anything with this wave is expected to have some pretty slow development as of right now. It's something we'll keep an eye on, but right now I haven't seen a lot of models indicate a lot of strengthening with this tropical wave as it does move farther and farther over to the west. So let's take a look at your 7-day forecast. 88 turns into 89, then 91 and 90. So really right there near the 90-degree mark each of the next 4 days. I still think your rain chances go down as we go Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Very opportune for any outdoor plans that you are planning over the course of this weekend. And then we see a bump down as we head into the beginning of next week, that first day of fall on Monday. I think this downtick will mainly be associated with increased cloud cover, just maybe limiting the warm up by about 2 or 3 degrees. But it would at least put us slightly below average. Average high this time of year, 88 degrees, and we hit that yesterday. We're looking to hit it each of the next 4 days at the very least. And then I think we'll go down somewhere into the mid 80s, the upper 80s. Overall, it would be very opportune and very appropriate to ring in the fall season, which is a cooler time of year with some below average temperatures as we roll into Monday. Still a 20% chance of seeing a stray shower or two, but that's going to definitely need some fine tuning. We didn't see much agreement whatsoever amongst the long range models, and then still kind of hovering somewhere in the 80s for high temperatures is what I see happening over the course of next week. Didn't see any 90s necessarily in the forecast. Those 90s are getting less probable as we go into the later portions of this year. And speaking of the fall season, when can you expect the turning of the color of some of those leaves out there, those reds, those yellows, those orange colors associated with some of those leaves? Still going to be quite a bit into the fall season before we start to see that. If you want to see some of the fall foliage a little bit earlier, your best bet is going to be the North Georgia mountains, because this green shade right here correlates to late October. So that's going to get into kind of peak college football time, number one, but also closer to the Halloween season. That's when the North Georgia mountains can expect that peak fall foliage. So when the leaves are really at their most vibrant in color. Then towards the Piedmont region of the state of Georgia, early November is when you should expect the peak of that fall foliage. Some of those areas do creep down into central Georgia, Jasper County to be specific. And then most of central Georgia, you can expect all those leaves to turn those beautiful colors as we go into mid-November. So like I said, still quite a while, even though we transition into the official start of fall next Monday. And as we know, we'd like to hold on to some of those warmer temperatures for just a little bit longer here in central Georgia. I wouldn't classify our first fall day until I get a high temperature that's somewhere in the 70s. We're starting out somewhere in the 50s, and we typically don't get into a good stretch of that until we get into maybe middle October. So still going to be quite a while until we feel the full impacts of the fall season, but it is going to be the official start of fall. I know pumpkin spice lattes are already running rampant across coffee shops everywhere. So go ahead and get in the fall spirit, and eventually all of the weather impacts associated with the fall season will follow. If you know anyone that lives down in South Georgia, then most southern areas of Georgia are expecting their peak fall foliage in late November. That's that dark brown color. And then once you get down into Florida, you typically have little to no peak fall foliage whatsoever. You don't have as much in the way of anything other than those evergreen trees, and along with that, plenty of palm trees down in Florida. So obviously we know those leaves don't change colors, but a lot to get excited about in the near future. For your forecast specifically, not too many changes. We're continuing to pick at straws with those rain chances. Have the rain jacket and the umbrella ready to go if you're worried about encountering one of those stray showers. But overall, I think there's a good likelihood that you dodge any of those showers. We'll have to fine tune next week's forecast, but it does look promising right now that at least some models are hinting at more widespread rain in the forecast rather than just these general hit or miss showers that only a select few areas are catching the rain. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for at least a little bit of rain. We're in a very dry period as of right now. We've had warm temperatures. We haven't had many rain chances, so we'll continue to keep a close eye and an update on all of that as we go forward. Tomorrow will be a day to look out for, because we will get an update or an updated release of our drought monitor, which will be as of yesterday, as of this past Tuesday. So once we get the latest data with that, we can kind of give you a better idea about which areas are really running dry, which areas are probably you're going to need to go outside, maybe run the sprinklers a couple times throughout the day, maybe go outside, water all those flowers, water your backyard garden just a couple times a day, because you definitely can't count on much in the way of rain in the near future in order to provide for some hydration for all of those plants. So thanks for tuning in. That will do it for your extended forecast this Wednesday. We'll see you back here once again at 10:30 sharp tomorrow for another update on your extended forecast.